Hello, world, and welcome. My guest today is David Lindsay. David Lindsay is a Toronto-based guitarist and composer with a unique style that transcends classification. He has 6 albums to his credit and is currently working on more new material as we speak. David studied classical guitar performance at Dalhousie University, Nova Scotia with Professor Carl van Vagelen, who studied with the late great Andre Segovia. And David also studied at the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto. His new album is called Follow the Sun. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. You know, you've been playing the guitar for a long time now. Tell me about the early days. What inspired you to get started with guitar in the first place?
I'm sure you've heard this response from others. Beatles.
Mine too.
Older sister, who was, we're five years apart. So she was, when the Beatles broke in North America, she was 13. I was 8. And the house was just filled with Beatles music, and her room was plastered with Beatles posters. And when A Hard Day's Night came out, I begged my sister to take me with her friend, and she wouldn't. And my dad sort of spoke to her and said, "Well, I think you should take David." So I was just absolutely, at 8 years old, completely transfixed by what I was seeing and what I was hearing. And I sort of thought, well, that looks like a good thing to do when I grow up.
Wait, wait a minute. You actually saw the Beatles at 8 years old?
No. I was 8 when the Beatles broke, and then I was, I don't know, 9 when A Hard Day's Night came out in the film.
When the film, okay.
I went to see I talked my sister, or my dad advised my sister that she should take me. So
Absolutely.
I was just sort of surrounded by music, and it was Beatles. My dad really liked big band sound, and he would put it on, and my mother would say, "Put that off." And she would say, "If you want to, let's put on some pipe music." My mom was from Scotland, and she loved the bagpipes. So growing up, it was either Beatles or big band or Scottish bagpipes.
Wow, what a combination.
Yes, all sort of
All
all over the
together.
place. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. And when you started, did you have some like local teachers, or did you figure stuff out on your own?
Uh, my sister borrowed a guitar, a steel string acoustic guitar from my cousin Ian, and she never really played it, and she only had it for a brief time. But I wasn't allowed in her bedroom, so no one would have to be home. I would go into her bedroom. I would listen to her Beatles records, of course, and I started sort of imitating with a tennis racket in front of a mirror. I think we all did that. And then when the guitar arrived, I was like, I would take it into the stairwell of the house because the acoustics were really good. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just playing. And I only played with my right hand because I didn't know what to do with my left hand, right? I sort of
Right.
couldn't manage anything there. So I just sat and I would just pluck the strings and just zone out.
And just hear the drone sounds in the
Just yeah,
in the
just
stairwell, right?
the articulation, the sustain, and it was just all sort of seemed like magic, and the only thing that mattered in the moment.
That's great. That's a great way to start.
Yeah.
And how did that move into being fascinated with classical guitar and eventually getting to Dalhousie?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got as a gift when I was 13 a guitar, a steel string, and I got a book, and I didn't take lessons, but I sort of worked through a book, but it was very sort of sporadic. and it wasn't consistent. And then when I was 16, uh, I started thinking about the guitar more seriously, and uh, I was quite inspired and moved at the time, uh, being introduced to the Canadian singer-songwriter Bruce Cockburn,
Mm.
and I I went to see him at Massey Hall. I think this is when he had released, I think it was his third album, Night Vision,
Hmm.
and he there's an instrumental on that. There's two instrumentals on that album. One of them is called "Islands in a Black Sky," and I saw Bruce perform that at Massey Hall, and I could have left the concert after that piece.
Hmm.
I was just like holy, that's exactly what I want to do, right? So
Yeah.
I decided, and I was teaching myself folk songs and stuff, Neil Young and sort of what was popular at the time. And I thought, well, Bruce seems pretty serious about the guitar. I think, how do I get serious about the guitar?
Right.
So when I turned 17, my mother said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I want guitar lessons." Uh, so I enrolled at the conservatory. This was
Hmm.
in my last year, just starting my last year of high school.
Hmm.
So I took guitar, classical guitar at the Royal Conservatory part time, and music theory, and uh, and then after I graduated from high school, I was actually planning on going to art school, and I found music more compelling. So I enrolled in the conservatory full time right after graduating from high school. So I took guitar ear training
Hmm.
with Samuel Leviton, which was fantastic, and history and all sort of a rounded music subjects. And then I was planning on just staying at the conservatory and just going through the program, sort of ARCT, associateship track,
Hmm.
and another guitarist friend who had studied with Carl Van Fegelen, Paul Bernard, said, you have to go study with Carl at Dalhousie. So I went, oh, okay. uh,
That's
I
always
was,
the best
I
answer.
was,
Oh, okay.
yeah, 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 agree. So that year, that was 1975, and it was kind of a real renaissance of classical guitar. That year was the I don't think it was the first international guitar competition, but there was an international guitar competition held at the University of Toronto Music School in Toronto, and Carl was there, and so I went through the channels to apply to get into Dalhousie, and I did an audition tape and everything else like that. But uh, Carl got in touch with me and said that he wanted to hear me play, so that I would do a live audition with him at the music school while this guitar competition was going on, and so I we found a room, and Carl said play. So
In a totally non-intimidating way, of course.
yeah, yeah, so play. So I can't remember what I played. I think I played Fernando Sor, study number 17. And I don't know if I did a very good job of it, but Carl Carl liked it. So uh, and I got in.
And now I'm really curious. What happened? What happened to the Bruce Cockburn component through all those classical
Oh,
studies?
I
Was it still in your mind?
yeah, I sort of I suddenly I found myself in the classical world of music, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's pretty insular.
Mm-hmm.
I found that a lot of classical musicians, not on guitar necessarily, but like, piano students and voice students and violin students had been at it for many years, sometimes as young as 7 or 8, and and didn't really listen much to anything other than classical music for the most part. But although I kind of became immersed in that world, I would still I really would continue listening to, like, I listen to popular music, rock music. I beyond the Beatles, it was Led Zeppelin, and
Mm-hmm.
you know uh, and Neil Young, and I've been a big fan of Bruce Cockburn for ages, still am. Yeah.
So you basically had those two tracks going all the time.
Yes, yes. The inspiration. I when I'm asked sort of this question or similar question is sort of what inspired me. The thing that inspired me to, well, Joni Mitchell, actually, my introduction to Joni Mitchell was through a film, an NFB film. That's the National Film Board in
Right.
Canada.
Mm-hmm.
They did a film in the early 70s. I think it's pretty obscure now. I looked for it a couple of years ago, but it was called WILF, WILF, WILF. And it was a film about the demise, if you will, of the family farm in, in North America. In this case, it was an Ontario farm. And the film opens, you're in the farmhouse, and Wilf is alone sitting at the kitchen table. The kitchen table's right up against a window. The window is looking out into the farm, and it's a farm scene, and there's a horse, sort of in the distance, and it looks like to be like late November or early December, but it looks and it has the feel of the first snowfall.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those gentle snowfalls coming down.
Right.
And this is the start of the film. And the soundtrack for that was Joni Mitchell's song Sisotobel Lane, which is on her first album. And this is that album came out in 1968, Song to a Seagull. And seeing that image and hearing that music, I was, again, I'll use the word transfixed. I was transfixed, and I'd never heard anything like it, and it was so moving. And so got to the end of the film, Wilf, and credits are rolling, and it's Sisotobel Lane by Joni Mitchell. This was like grade 10 geography class. So a cool geography teacher.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was like, Joni Mitchell, Joni Mitchell. So I went to Sam the Record Man, the big
Mm-hmm.
place here in Toronto, or was here in Toronto, the sort of main place to get your records and albums and stuff. And I got that album, and I thought I want to be an artist, you know. So it was. I think Joni Mitchell inspired me to become an artist, and Bruce Cockburn inspired me to take the guitar very seriously.
Well, you had, they didn't realize it, but they were definitely mentors for you.
Yes, and distant mentors. Yes.
Distant mentors.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if you know this, but when I was doing some YouTube stuff, I think it was today even, I was looking up things of yours, and there's people who actually play your songs as covers.
Yeah, there's a young woman in Holland,
Hmm. That's who
who
I saw.
learned rather remarkably learned a piece of mine by just listening to it, and she does I haven't seen it in a while, but she does a really good job of it. I think
Yeah.
it's a piece called Round Dance, which is
That's
in
the one
a
I saw.
yeah, which is in an alternate tuning, but she managed to somehow do it in standard tuning, and I felt like getting in touch with her saying it's easier to play if you have an
I
alternate.
think I think you sh- I think you should. Well, there's many. Yeah, you should definitely send a note and say, by the way,
Yeah,
this is
here's the tuning. Yeah.
yeah, here's the tuning.
Yeah,
But
but she
there's
does a great job of it. Yeah.
yeah, because I noticed she had her capo way up. It's interesting though. Many great musicians start by trying to copy something that they didn't realize was done another way, and so they come up with their own way of producing the sound.
Exactly.
And they kind of develop their own thing based on what they've been trying to copy, but it's done a completely different way than the original artist. So
Yes.
it's kind of cool. So you're a mentor in ways too. Maybe you didn't know that.
Just sort of sharing the wealth, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And so the composing part, how did that manifest? I guess how did that come about? Where you decided to actually start writing songs?
Yeah.
Because most people are copying the Beatles, they're copying Bruce, they're even copying
Yeah.
Joni, but that doesn't necessarily mean they can write.
No, no. Maybe the interest in like when I decided I would enroll in music school full time, uh, it was based on I didn't articulate this in my mind or sort of think of it. It was I just wanted to learn as much as possible about guitar playing and to learn how to play correctly. And behind the interest in learning how to play the guitar properly uh, was a creative impetus, and I think I that desire or that interest was from fine art. I My dad was a painter, and I just was surrounded by sort of that creating stuff out of nothing, or whatever medium you sort of choose. So I was always fascinated with that, just with the creative process of creating something. And this is sort of how I'm articulating it now, and this is not back then, but it's creating something out of
Out of,
thin air,
yeah, it's a,
or
it's a blank canvas.
yeah, just yeah, it's I guess that's why they use the word recreation. Recreation is really recreation, is that we're emulating the creator, you know, however you want to define that. But so even from the beginning, I was moved by creating something of my own. And I found it's funny because when through the music school, you get so involved in it, and you're so immersed in the classical world. At a certain point, you start thinking to yourself, oh well, someday maybe, big maybe, I'll be on stage wearing a tuxedo playing Villalobos and Bach and whatever. So I really did get into all that stuff. But I was, as I was learning to play the pieces, I was really fascinated with how composers how they composed on the particular instrument. Like, and in particular, Villalobos, how his music is so idiomatic and falls nicely under the hand. It's not always easy. It's not easy, but that just fascinated with how composers approach, in particular, fretted stringed instruments. And I studied lute for a while as well, and I learned a lot from. So I was absorbing composition as I was learning classical pieces. I sort of there was sort of, I guess, my mind's eye or my heart was sort of trained on the creative aspect of what I was doing, and I was also always very interested in reading about lives of composers, and so I think subconsciously I was while I was studying classical music, I was really studying composition. You know?
Little did you know.
Yeah. So I kind of had that idea from the beginning, but didn't really articulate it in that sort of fashion.
Well, very often, we can't really explain things until we look back on them.
That's
for
right.
sure, right?
That's right.
I guess that's why they say hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
Because actually Steve Jobs said the same thing about connecting the dots. You can only really connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect them looking forwards.
Yes.
So
it's like, what was that?
What was that? And then you start.
What is
that?
You
start to figure it all out. And it's interesting you mentioned that about things falling under the fingers.
Yes.
Because I remember having those same thoughts about even we talked about Etude 1 the other day, the Villalobos Etude 1.
Yes.
And really the fingers are nothing. The fingers for the most part in many parts are just sitting nice and still doing chord form. But really all the magic is happening here.
Yes. Another thing I just thought of as you were saying that, Mark, is that when we learn guitar, for the most part, we tend to approach it in terms of learning chords. Mm-hmm. This chord, that chord, moving from one chord to another.
Sure.
Sort of like almost like
it's very shape focused.
Yeah, like blocks, chords, and so. But at a certain point, I think sort of the mystery of the guitar, or the mystery of writing for the guitar, is sort of not thinking in terms of chords, but thinking in terms of voices, individual voices, like the bass, the treble, the mid voices, and the way the guitar is, just that you can get the same note with an open string as you can with a closed string, and you can get a note on one string, you can get the same note on another string in another position, and so on and so forth. And so it's very fluid in a way, and I think when you stop thinking about the guitar playing in terms of moving from this chord to that chord to this chord to this chord, although you are, moving those chords, but you're actually it's voices, individual voices that sort of come together and weave and create chords, but the chords are really voices. Each. I'm not explaining this very well.
Well, no, they say they always talk about the guitar. All the great guys always talk about the guitar being a little mini orchestra.
Correct. Yes.
And so if you approach it with that mindset of a mini orchestra or a string quartet or whatever is on your mind at that time, you do things differently than you would if you were just thinking in chord shapes.
Yes.
And I'm moving from E minor to A7 and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it completely changes. And even the notes, as you were saying, the same note on different strings has a completely different flavor, even though it's the exact same note.
Right.
It doesn't sound the same, as far as, I guess, timbre would be the right word, right?
Yes. And that leads me to think of like when we learn to play guitar in standard tuning, E8 low to high, EAD, GBE, whatever it is, and so again the chord idea of sort of analyzing playing the guitar from movement of chords, one chord to the next. But when you start working with what are called alternate tunings, And by the way, the more you work with alternate tunings, the more you realize that standard tuning is an alternate tuning.
Actually,
Anyway, so that whole thing about chords and chordal analysis is just out the window, right? I mean, you can analyze it that way, but if you've learned on standard tuning and then you go to alternate tuning, you're sort of it's becomes intuitive in a way, and more in the moment, using your ears. And so it becomes, I guess, in your own mind, or at least I think of it, that it becomes less theoretical, uh, less sort of conventional and sort of chord oriented, and less analytical, uh, to something that just feels very open and sort of very free, and that you're really just working with sound and sort of the nature of the guitar. It's hard to describe. When I first started working with Will Ackerman about 11 years ago, I was talking to him about alternate tunings, and he went through the same kind of thing. Started guitar when he was 11 or 12, and you know, uh, learning songs and stuff, and then eventually he he got turned on to John Fahey's music. It's very freeing in a way. Plus, the different timbres and modes. It just the character of the instrument. This is amazing about a guitar is that you can tune it in different ways, and it gives you a very different mood or a very different affect. Different sound that opens up. Compositionally, that just opens all kinds of doors, I find.
you've got me thinking now about something, which is that we've talked about this before about every time you pick up a guitar, it kind of has a story to tell.
That's
No
right.
matter
It's
no
been
matter when
waiting for you.
it's been waiting for you, and you start playing it, and you play different things than you played on different guitars because it has a certain voice and a certain feel and flavor, and it wants to tell you something. So you start to find out what it wants to tell you, and you play. Maybe that's kind of in a way the same thing with the open or alternate tunings, where different alternate tunings are kind of like getting a different guitar, and the same thing kind of happens.
Exactly. Yes, that's true. But as I said, it's funny if you make your if and when you do make your way back to standard tuning, you're thinking
Hmm.
about standard tuning in a whole different way.
Right.
I think you gain a lot by exploring the guitar in different tunings. I think it helps you become a more intuitive player, and it also sort of helps your ear, like listening, hearing what's the guitar's telling you.
Yeah. What the guitar wants to tell you. What I have to.
Like it or not.
I it definitely wants to get you to play a certain way, and
Hmm.
that leads me to my question I was going to ask you about your technique, because you have a great classical guitar technique. You also played steel string for some time,
I did. Yes.
and then you came back to classical guitar. What do you feel about technique now? Are you using a strict classical technique on your compositions, or did you come up with your own invention or your own hybrid way of doing things?
I think so. I I taught guitar for a while, so I'm going to go to sort of teach my experience teaching
Hmm.
guitar. A lot of the students I would get had been playing for quite a long time,
Hmm.
uh, and had kind of hit a wall. This is their, what they're saying, or they're a point of frustration where they just feel they're not getting any better, and unable to express the way they want to. And quite often I found that that was from having learned what are called bad habits or improper hand positions or just sort of not working with the hands, the body, uh, in a way that allows you to open up. So I guess the point is that that I didn't play guitar all that much or that long before I started studying classical.
Right.
So I'm kind of stuck with classical technique.
Hmm.
And I mean, I so and I guess my orientation to music is such that the classical technique works well for me. Uh, I sort of, but I love other styles like there's a lot to be, from strumming,
Hmm.
strumming techniques and combining strumming and picking and uh, sort of using different techniques. So I guess the not the downside, but maybe it is the downside of a classical technique and having learned a strict classical technique is sort of if you want to sort of go outside of that technique to produce a certain effect or a certain sound, you haven't learned that, and it's so different from classical technique that it's like you're on the steep learning curve, again. So it's a blessing and a curse, classical training, in a way, depending on your creative parameters, I guess. I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
When I listen to your music, it doesn't sound classical. I know that you're using classical technique, but it doesn't have that sound. It has something completely different, which is great because you haven't done what was in the past. You're doing things that are more future oriented and unique to you.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. As you're saying that, I'm thinking that I like if I try to be objective about what I write and what I've written, I don't really use a lot of what are sort of guitar idioms,
Hmm.
like sliding and hammering on and pulling off and just sort of a lot of things that are unique to guitar technique.
Right.
I tend to articulate
Hmm.
everything.
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't use slides, which are beautiful, done
Hmm.
beautifully and very expressive and or sort of unique idioms that are guitar, you know. And I wonder if like that was one thing about studying classical music was the exposure to not just guitar music, but classical
Hmm.
guitar music or transcriptions from the Baroque and the Renaissance and all that was piano music
Hmm.
because everything on the piano is articulated, right? There's
Right.
no
Hmm.
sliding, there's no pulling off,
Hmm.
there's pounding, but and so I think my writing has, in some degree, I guess, been influenced by piano music.
Yeah. That makes
Using
perfect that
arpeggio,
makes perfect sense.
using arpeggio melody in sort of arpeggio sort of styles.
Well,
So yeah,
so this would be a good time to say, hey, let's hear you play something from your new album.
okay.
And for anyone who's going to do a YouTube video and recreate this song, do you want to tell them what the tuning is so that they don't have to? No? Okay, we'll keep it a secret. All right.
I just like 2 seconds. I just gotta remind myself. I think this piece I'm gonna play is called Open Air. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this is with Premique Russell
Mm-hmm.
Tubbs, but I'll do the solo version. I don't want to scare people with my more lugubrious pieces.
Okay, I'm getting my dictionary out.
Okay. Conrad Black words. Okay.
Yeah. What a great piece.
Yeah, you
Wow.
like? Oh, thank you,
Wow.
thank you. Yeah.
I went off wow.
Oh, well, thank you. I think it's that one's called Open Air. Open Air. Yeah. And on the album it's with Premique on the wind synth. So
It's a
yeah.
great tune. It's a great tune.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow.
It's a pretty simple piece, really. It's just the melody on the fourth string with an arpeggio. You know, the same. You know, all the way. It's like a really simple. It's a very simple. The reason I played it because it is so simple to play.
Well, don't give away any trade secrets now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? It's interesting because you talk about when you first listened to Bruce Cockburn and taking music so seriously, and you could feel that, and you know, I think Joni Mitchell's the same way as when she plays, and even though it may seem simple, to play a piece beautifully and with emotion and all the rest of it, and articulate that throughout the entire piece is no simple feat. It's not easy.
No, and it doesn't get any easier. Yeah.
Darn.
Well, no, I guess it's you know, age old practice and all that, but it's it's just I think it's sort of trying to get your head out of it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and play from the heart, not, you know, it's like, get this out of it. No head, no, you know.
Yes. Yeah. You have to
Yeah.
get out of your own. You have to get out of your own way.
Yes, exactly. That's a way of putting it for sure.
Something like that.
Yes.
But it's really true because the more you're thinking, the less you're actually playing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or there's, you know, there's that voice sort of, oh, you know, okay. That was too loud.
Watch out for the
Right,
fourth
right,
fret.
right.
It's a doozy.
Shouldn't have done that differently.
Yeah, you definitely have to keep the mind quiet for that. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Shut
For
up.
sure.
Shut up.
It's a great piece. It's a great
Thanks.
piece. You mentioned you were talking about Will Ackerman, and so you actually started, I think, recording with him and working at Imaginary Road Studios. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. I did an album back in the mid '90s on what was then called the Solitudes label. Dan Gibson, Canadian filmmaker, had started up this label of nature sounds, and then he started doing music with nature sounds, mostly birds, with I think Henny Becker on doing synth stuff.
Okay.
Anyway, so eventually Dan passed the label Solitudes on to his son Gordon Gibson, and Gordon approached me and said, "We want to sort of make the label a little more sort of serious, and we want you to be our first purely instrumental album."
Wow.
So that came out. I don't know if it's still in circulation. Anyway, so I for a period I was away from music for all kinds of different reasons, but kind of got away, and then in 2012, although I stopped playing guitar and I stopped writing for years, but what I did do was I played studied on my own Baroque lute, and I worked hard at it. my ex-wife would be upstairs watching Lord of the Rings for the 100th time, and I was in the basement playing Baroque lute. Anyway, eventually I got to a point where I thought, oh, I can, So I joined the Lute Society of America, and I went out to master classes and workshops in Vancouver. I think this was in 2013 with Robert Bartow, Baroque lute player, and Stephen Stubbs, and and so I participated in master classes there. How this is going to get to composition and guitar is coming up.
Okay.
At the end of the week, Robert Bardo did a concert at the UBC Concert Hall, University of British Columbia, in Vancouver, and he did pretty much all Weiss, Sylvius Leopold Weiss, a contemporary of J.S. Bach, who composed for, and he was a virtuoso on the Baroque lute. And I came away from that concert thinking, wow, the magic, just the magic that was created by not just the music and the compositions, but the way Robert played. It was just so poetic and so expressive. And I was sort of lying there going to sleep, and I thought, wait a minute, I can make magic too. Or at least I used to. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to get a guitar. I'd gotten rid of all my guitars. I'm going to commission a guitar. So I commissioned a guitar, classical guitar, from William Laskin, Grit Laskin, and thought, okay, I'm going to get back into music. I want to dive back into the music business. So I thought, who will I contact? Well, I drew up a list of three people. One was Harvey Glatt, who has been big on he died recently. Harvey was really big on the music scene in Canada for a long, long time. And Harvey was a big support to me when I started out in music, doing my own thing, performing and writing in Ottawa. Harvey owned Shea 106, the FM station, and I opened for Mary Margaret O'Hara at a concert in Ottawa, and Harvey was there, and Harvey approached me afterward and gave me his card and said, give me a call. I love what you do. So I went to visit Harvey, and he offered me some live radio shows and put me in touch with people, encouraged me to do a demo, which I did, and I, started connecting with influential people in the Canadian music scene, or at least the music scene in Toronto and Ottawa, and they were all saying, "Oh, you got to go to Windham Hill Records," which was the label that Will Ackerman founded. "Oh no, you should really be on Windham Hill or go to Windham Hill," And so I started thinking, okay, well, I'll try to work towards that, and so I did, but I managed to have them listen to my demo, but as I learned 25 years later, Will didn't hear it. It was somebody else they had listening to all the zillions of demos they would be getting.
Right.
So this is 1988. So now I'm going to jump forward to your question of getting working with Will Ackerman. And so when I decided, after my magic moment with Robert Bardo, I thought, okay, I want to get back into music seriously, and who am I going to contact? So I thought, okay, well, who do I know? And so number one was Harvey, number two was Gordon Gibson, and number three was Will Ackerman, right? And I knew Will had sold Windham Hill Records back in the mid-90s and was now in Vermont from California, and that he had his own studio and he was producing independent artists. So I thought, no, I don't think I want, Gordon's not really active anymore. Harvey's in his early 80s, and I don't know that Harvey could do anything more for me than he'd already has. So I thought, oh, I'll send Will Ackerman an email. So I composed this email at the time on my BlackBerry, and
Right.
I put it through about 17 revisions, and all the time thinking, oh, there's no way, there's no way. So uh, one one Sunday in March, I was getting the car washed, and I was waiting in line at the car wash, and I was putting this email composed to Will through yet another pointless editing process.
Right.
So I wasn't paying attention, and so the car wash attendant knocked on the window like, "Hey, you're
Right.
next," kind of thing, and I went, "Oh!" So I threw the BlackBerry back into the holster and went into the car wash, got out of the car, came back, pulled the BlackBerry out, and said, "Oh my God, I sent it." So,
Classic.
so I was like, "Oh my God, I sent it." I thought, oh, I felt sick, you know. Uh,
That was
anyway,
that was that was like divine
well, it
intervention.
was like I blew it. I blew it. And so I don't know, about an hour later, I'm walking the dog and my BlackBerry pings, and it's Will. Hi, got your email. And he said, nice to hear from you. This is what we're doing, kind of thing. Can you put together a demo for me? Uh, so at that point, I hadn't gotten my new guitar. And this is 2014. And so I thought, oh, what am I going to do? I'll have to send him some of my old stuff that I recorded on the steel string guitar from
Right.
like 1990 or whenever it was, 1989. So I sent that. I put together he wanted three pieces, which is a standard sort of demo submission, quick and dirty. So I pulled up three pieces from that I had recorded back in the late 80s. I did an album, or what was my demo for Windham Hill was actually a full album that I did with Eugene Martinick, producer. And so I took three pieces from that album and sent it to Will, and he got back to me, and you know he was pretty happy, and said, this is some of the best writing and playing I've heard in years. I'd be honored to work with you. So he gave me some available dates, and I sort of, oh, okay, whoa, sort of getting on the ride.
So,
And so I got my guitar. So all that stuff with Will, with the demo and the reaching out, that was like March, April, May around.
mhm.
And so I didn't get my Alaskan guitar until June uh, of that same year, and I there wasn't much available in terms of recording times, but there was a spot starting in September,
Mhm.
so I said, okay, I'll take it. It was like 3 days, second week of September, 2014. And and after I sort of agreed to all that, it was like, oh my God, what have I done? You know? So I worked very hard on the new classical guitar, and I pulled some pieces out of mothballs that I had written on the steel string in the 80s and early 90s. And so I'd have something to record. So I managed to get that whipped up. But anyway, once I started the recording with Will, it just, things started flowing. And so that first album I did with Will, called Nightbound, which was released in 2015, uh, there's only about three or four, if that, pieces on that album that were old pieces. So through that recording process, so I went down to Vermont a few times, uh, and so into the next spring, into the next summer, I was still recording that first album. And but during that time, I was writing new stuff and rehearsing it and recording it. So that's how. I don't know if I answered your question. It was a pretty.
Well, you did,
That's
and
how I got
actually,
working with Ackerman. That's how that's how things unfolded with Will Ackerman. But like I was really nervous when I went down there to start the recording. The first thing I thought was that the first problem I have is that he's going to think I'm a fraud because I arrived with a classical guitar and my demo that he was all excited about was all old stuff on the steel string, right? So,
right. That must have been.
so,
It must have been unnerving. It must have
so
been
I thought,
unnerving.
okay, I'm in trouble. I haven't even started. But Will was fine. I don't care what kind of guitar you're playing. So it's like, okay, whew. So
I, I think it's just it's such an incredible. I mean, I'm listening to this story and I'm envisioning that you're playing the lute, you haven't touched the guitar, you don't even own a guitar for that matter. You haven't done anything, and all of a sudden it's just okay. I think I'm going to do this, and you just did it.
well, yeah, I did. But what I did, Mark, was I picked up on the thread I left behind.
Hmm.
Like when I was 17 and decided to uh, study music seriously and go to music school and everything else like that, and learn how to create music or try. Uh, I was like, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew kind of, had a sense of sort of answering the three big existential questions: Who am I? What am I? Why am I here?
Hmm.
It was like, well, I kind of knew, I thought I knew that.
Hmm.
And so, fast forward to, the lute and the master classes and Robert Bardo's concert. It was a rediscovery.
Hmm.
It was like, okay, I I left something behind, I dropped something. I better go back and pick it up,
Right,
you
right,
know.
and it was still there, just waiting.
So yeah, so I was pretty rusty, in some ways, but my soul and my heart, music was still, still there for me,
Yeah, it's
fortunately.
such a great story. It really is a great story. It's really inspiring, and I'm feeling like someone's going to be watching this or listening to this, and basically go, yeah, right. I'm going back for that piece,
Yeah.
and 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 I'm going to do something about it. And that's
Yeah.
it's a great a really great story.
Oh,
Wow.
thanks. I've given you all the good parts, right?
Well, the parts are good. On the second part,
There were some rough patches, but
of course, there always is. There
yeah,
always is.
we do have to suffer for good stuff, in
Absolutely,
some ways.
absolutely. And now this new album, you recorded that in Toronto, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I I did 5 albums with Will,
Mm-hmm.
and I, I thought of doing this one with Will, but I just it was with uh, the sort of the parity of the dollar,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought I economically this just doesn't make sense, and
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of had this inkling that I should shake things up a bit and take a different approach to production.
Right.
Will he's a very powerful producer, and he's got a style and an approach to production, which
Mm-hmm.
is really fantastic. It's worked really really well for him, and it worked well for me. But I just my gut was telling me do something different,
Mm-hmm.
take a different fundamental approach to it. So I did it here in Toronto with Gary Honess,
Mm-hmm.
who's the owner and operator of Cool Music, spelled Kuhlmuzik, or Z if you're listening in the United States. Um, uh, and I had worked with Gary before. Back in the 90s, I did some stuff in the studio with Gary, and got back in touch with Gary, and I thought I would produce the album on my own. Uh, and I started getting a little worried about wearing the producer's hat. Um, Sort of had this feeling like, ooh, being a producer is very different than being the creator. You know,
Sure.
uh, I didn't think that I had what it really would take to be objective enough and to be savvy enough to produce my own music. Um, so I thought I'm going to ask Gary to co-produce it with me. And uh, Gary's a fantastic engineer, but he's also, he's a musician, and has a fantastic ear and a great music sensibility, and had worked on production on other albums. I think he was co-producer on one of Ron Korb's albums, the flute player, Ron Korb, Korb. So Gary had experience as a producer, and all the time that I'd worked with Gary before, it was as an engineer. And, when you're working with a really good engineer and you're not sure about what you're after, you'll ask the engineer, a production question, right? And a good engineer who stays in their lane is very careful to answer that question. It's like, I'm the engineer, don't ask me those questions, right?
Hmm.
And of course, the engineer is aware of sort of artistic sensitivities and sensibilities, and you know might want to express their opinion but don't want to offend the artist, right? In
Right.
case it doesn't you know accord with what the artist is after. And so I in inviting Gary to co-produce, it just opened, like, Gary, he was really good. He we talked a lot initially about microphone placements and stuff, and I had an experience from Imaginary Road Studios, how to do microphone configurations. So we just together did some research and came up with some really good configurations for the microphones, and tested the sound and tried different stuff and came up with a really good guitar image.
Hmm.
Um, and then originally I thought that it'll just be a solo guitar record, and but then I thought, oh, I really, and I did research on solo guitar albums, and sort of the artificial intelligence sort of summation was that, yeah, solo guitar records are good if the writing is really strong and it's really well produced, right? And so like, okay, can I, you know, but I think I thought, well, maybe I can sort of meet that point. But then I thought, but you're in a recording studio, and you're putting something down that's some permanence,
Hmm.
something you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life.
Right.
I thought, no, I want to invite others. So I had worked with Prameek Russell Tubbs on the previous album, or the last album I did with Will, called With You. Prameek was on one piece, and this was Will's production idea, to have wind synthesizer on a piece, and so the engineer sent the piece to Prameek, and Prameek got directly in touch with me via
Hmm.
email and said, "This is fantastic. Do you have any more? I just got one."
Only one?
Only
Come
one?
on. Come on.
So I was like, really, oh wow, that's sweet. And so when I fast forward to doing this last album, I thought I really that was very moving for me, and I really liked what Prameek did on that one piece. on the other album, the name of which I can't remember. Uh, and I thought I'm gonna ask Pramik to play on this album, and so I got in touch with him, and he's on three selections, and I really like what he does. He seems to understand what I'm after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just such a different sound than the guitar, and it's not a flute, but it's got air, and it works. I think it works well when you add effects to a guitar. You're in the same sort of medium. When you add reverb or delay or ambience or whatever, you're now into wind synth territory. There's common ground here now in terms of fidelity and sound.
And it really weaves nicely with what you're doing.
Yeah,
it's not in the way. It's just it's always adding something.
Yeah, Pramik is an amazing artist, amazing musician. It's a real honor to work with him, and I think I'm planning another album, and I think I'm going to have more of Pramik, perhaps. But for Gary's part, Gary did some programming, like what are called plugins, sort of orchestral effects, and I've always been a big fan of the Moody Blues. Moody Blues.
I do.
The Mellotron, the Chamberlin, that sort of the orchestral effects with rock, that genre. I've always loved the production and the sound of the Moody Blues. So I kind of mentioned that to Gary as far as plugins. I said, it'd be nice to get some sort of a bit of a Moody Blues vibe, sort of low orchestral effects. And there's one piece on the new album where it sounds like low strings, sort of glowing, after the guitar sort of sound there's this sort of swell, very subtle, but I think very effective. So I want to explore more of that as well on the next album.
I think that you have a nice partnership with your engineer / co-producer, because that's the kind of thing that really, what you're telling me is there's many instances of really great artists. Really, you don't know about it until you have a discussion or you read about it, but a lot of their sounds, a lot of the things that really became part of their fabric happened because of having a great engineer who really understood what they were after and added something to the mix from an engineering point of view that made it something even more.
That's so true. I'm thinking, as you're saying that, to when I did that album with Eugene Martinick, I was like, oh wow, it's great to have a producer, and wow, thank you, and everything. And she says, all you need really is a good engineer. You don't need me. You just need a really good engineer, and you can pull it off. So there's a lot. Yeah. But with Gary, it was like, Gary's so polite, and as I said, he stays in his lane. If he's the engineer, he stays in his lane. I've worked with engineers who do not stay in their lane.
He's a professional.
Yeah, and so I was so glad that I invited him to co-produce it with me, because he just I was able to tap into, and he was free to bring some artistic values, his own sort of artistic values into the recording. Yeah,
that's amazing. Would you play another piece for us?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, in listening to all the stuff you told me today, and really understanding more about how you discovered things and these important parts of your life, it makes sense to me now when I hear you play, because you've sort of taken the pieces, right? Like the compositional, the compositional and creative thing that you always enjoyed, the taking it seriously part that impressed you about guitar playing, originally, and probably the when you were studying to be a concert classical guitarist, how to play a piece at that level and perform it, that way. I think you've sort of taken all of these things and made it your own with your own compositions, because you need all that to be able to do what you're doing, and you've got it.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I don't.
No, it's
Yeah, it's yeah, well, that's an interesting. Well, I think of the word synthesis, right? It's kind of
yeah,
a synthesis
yeah,
of all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
As far as like writing idiomatically for the instrument, learning works of composers, like I'm thinking classical composers, who were players, is
Villalobos would be a good
it's really
example.
helpful. Like going back to the Renaissance, like John Dowland, like for melody and just using voices and strings and then studying Baroque, particularly the music of Sylvaeus Leopold Weiss. I mean, Dowland and Weiss were virtuosos on the instrument, but they were also first-class composers, right? So, and Villalobos, he was a famous Brazilian. He's the guy in Brazil, right?
Yeah,
Still, um, he was a guitar player, right?
yeah.
And he wrote fantastic works for guitar, and I loved learning Villalobos stuff because it's just so idiomatic. But it just like Villalobos understood the guitar, knew how to play the guitar, and knew what works, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I sort of you try to absorb that if if you're learning and you're studying works from the past. It's really helpful, even though you're sort of, even if you're not consciously, have your mind trained on the compositional aspects or the idiomatic aspects. In learning the pieces, you absorb that somehow.
Yeah.
You just, if you're listening, you'll absorb it. So yeah,
It's
and just it's just hard labor. A lot of it is
yeah.
hard labor.
It's a lot of work.
You're a
We're not
lifer.
talk we're not
You're in the
talk
pen for life.
we're not talking about all the hard parts like practicing
That's right.
and
Yeah, just
yeah.
yeah. The feeling you're going back and need to go back, go forward, and yeah,
That's
it's
all part of it's all part of it.
yeah, and it's also you learn the lesson that if you it's if you you know if you've been away from playing for a while and you come back to it, you think, oh, this is such an unforgiving instrument. I'm being punished.
Yes. And the better the guitar, the more unforgiving it
That's
is.
right. That's right. But it's all from the heart. It's if it's in your heart, then the rest kind of follows in a way, with the hard labor.
With the hard, you have to have a bit of both.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I do want to also congratulate you on a couple things, because you were recently invited to become a member of the Recording Academy, that
Yeah,
organization
last year.
that presents the Grammys, and that's a huge honor.
Yeah, I guess Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, it is, and but it feels more like a community, like you've joined a
Hmm.
community.
Yes.
Um, and I thought, since I've, when at the point not that long ago where I made a recommitment to music, um, I thought, well, this is the logical thing to do, you know, uh, is to sort of throw your hat in and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, it is a great community, and I was actually looking at some things online from new members from Canada that were there, and all the pictures from SoCan and all these different things,
Hmm.
and it's really cool. So congratulations on that, and
Well, thank you.
just just as important and uplifting is your NACC Chill Chart #1 position.
Yes, the NACC. I had to ask my promoter what that was. It's the North American College and Community Radio. So college radio right across the United States and Canada. They have the chart, and on my last report from my promoter Laz Promotions,
Hmm.
uh, there's like #1 on the NACC chill chart, right? And I, I'm I say, well, I'm not crowing. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm crowing. What kind of amazes me and my promoter is that uh, the music, I guess, has some relevance to that demographic. It's funny because sometimes in the recording when we're mixing stuff or whatever, I would jokingly say to Gary, "Oh, the kids are gonna love this," you know. But whoa, just
and
a just
and
a joke, right? But the kids are loving it. So
the kids are loving it. I mean, it's quite a thing to be on the chart, just on the chart. But the fact that it's #1 on the chart
yeah,
is is
yeah, it's the first sort of #1 I got. There used to be a ZMR, Zone Music Reporter, in the States. They've sort of gone under, but they had a chart. Um, uh, and Nightbound reached #2 on their chart back in 2015 or 2016, and #1 was a Christmas album, and it was of course December, and so I thought, oh, but it's nice to be #1.
it's nice to be
So it's
it's nice to be
my first #1. Yeah,
it's great. It
with
really
with
is
such a
great.
great demographic, it's
Yeah.
uh, yeah. When I told a friend in Vancouver, he goes, "Oh, I'm not at all surprised, Dave. Kids are so stressed out these days." That's right. So on the chill chart.
You're on the chill chart. I was going to say that we talked previously, and I got to hear a little bit of what you've been working on for your next album. So it's great to know that there's a next album already in the works.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Lucky. I'm back into the rhythm of just working at it,
mhm,
writing and uh, uh, and incorporating writing with rehearsing, you know,
mhm.
uh, which is a lot of sort of going back and forth, Uh, it's hard to describe that process, but I think the first or the best description is being able to get into the zone,
Mhm.
whatever that zone is,
Mhm.
which isn't easy to do necessarily you know in our wired times. So I'm lucky that I have the time and the space to devote to music. So yeah, thanks, Mark.
I'm really looking forward to hearing more of the songs. But
Sure.
for now, I'm going to say it's been a real pleasure, and
Oh,
I
thank
can't
you.
I can't
It's been
and
a
I
real
can't wait
pleasure.
for the next album, because it means we're going to get to do another podcast and talk
Sure.
a bunch more, because You've got such great insights into music, composition, guitar playing, and the stories to go with it, which are fascinating and fun.
Oh, thanks, Mark. It's been a real pleasure to do this. It's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we will talk to you next time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.